At Camp Mackle in North Carolina, a green beret with an older background stood in the dark beside a ranger from Savannah, both men wearing boots, fattings, and a loaded rucksack. Before sunrise, the army already considered both soldiers elite. Before midnight, Delta's cadre treated that resume like dead weight. The number sounds like a barracks myth. 8 out of 10 green berets can be gone before Delta selection even feels like Delta selection. If a special forces tab makes you think a soldier is protected on day 1, the sandhills have already proved you wrong. One event strips away the uniform, the tab, the combat patch, and the team reputation. The question is brutally simple. Why does a soldier built for special forces fail when Delta makes him walk alone? The public version of this story starts in the late 1970s when 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta was still a strange new unit at Fort Bragg, hidden behind fences, rumors, and plainclothes recruiters. Eric Haney's account of early Delta selection gives the cleanest public look at the pattern. In one class, 163 men showed up. After the physical stress phase and the commander board, 12 men were accepted. That means a room full of already screened soldiers got reduced to a small fire team. For Green Berets, Rangers, airborne infantrymen, and combat veterans, the first insult was not the pain. The first insult was discovering that Delta selection did not care what any of them had already survived. The first morning looks almost too ordinary on paper. Fort Bragg roads, Holland drop zone, pine trees, dust, clipboards, trucks, a formation, and men trying to look relaxed in front of cadre who are studying every twitch. The candidate sees military familiarities everywhere. Boots on sand, rucks and rows, water cans, ammo cans, a bulletin board, and other soldiers wearing the same 1000Y confidence. A green beret is used to that environment. He knows range roads, field sites, team rooms, radios, rucksacks, maps, and instructors with dead eyes. That familiarity is the trap. Delta's first day uses ordinary army scenery to hide a different test. The timeline begins before the sun gives the Pinehurst sand any mercy. Around 0430, candidates are awake in barracks or staging areas, adjusting boots, shaving faces, tightening belts, checking cantons, and deciding whether the body feels good enough for the day. By 0600, the formation is already a sorting machine. Names are called. Trucks roll through Fort Bragg dust. Candidates are moved to a drop zone and placed under eyes that are not there to motivate them. The first events look like the kind of physical assessments a special forces soldier has seen for years. Push-ups, sit-ups, runs, swim tests, obstacle movements, and small administrative details that punish carelessness. A weak candidate can fail there. A strong candidate can also fail there by assuming the day is still about strength. By the afternoon, the first quiet damage is already visible. Some soldiers are injured. Some soldiers are embarrassed. Some soldiers are pretending the morning did not hurt. The Delta cadre does not have to scream much because the schedule is doing the work. The board, the list, the trucks, the water point, and the empty road create the pressure. A green beret who expects a team event may be looking for the hidden group problem. Delta gives him a road instead. Then comes the event that matters. The 18 Mi Rucksack March. In Haney's account, the candidates are moved to a sandy road, told the finish point, told the direction, and told they can voluntarily withdraw at any time. That last detail is not kindness. It is the blade. Delta does not need to drag a soldier out of selection when the soldier can remove himself. The road is straight enough to tempt speed, long enough to punish ego, and quiet enough to make every man hear his own breathing. The green beret starts with every reason to believe he should survive it. He has carried radios, weapons, water, mortar rounds, medical bags, demolition charges, and other mains gear in worse places than a Fort Bragg road. He has trained for long days in North Carolina, swamps, mountains, jungles, deserts, and foreign villages. He has lived under a rock before. The problem is that Delta is not asking whether the Green Beret can rock. Delta is asking whether the Green Beret can self-govern under load when nobody is coming to rescue his pace, his pride, or his decision-making. That is where day one starts breaking men who looked unbeatable at breakfast. The road march rewards a boring kind of intelligence. A candidate has to know how fast to move, when to drink, when to ignore another man passing him, when to protect his feet, when to let the shoulders burn without changing stride, and when to treat the road like math instead of war. The soldier who turns the first miles into a race can destroy himself before the second half. The soldier who waits too long to push can miss the standard. The soldier who tries to stay with a friend has already misunderstood the test. For a Green Beret, that mismatch is sharper than people admit. Special Forces trains exceptional soldiers, but the Special Forces identity is built around the Operational Detachment Alpha. 12 men, a team room, a captain, a warrant officer, weapons sergeants, engineer sergeants, medical surgeons, communication surgeons, and intelligence experience folded into one small unit. The ODA is not a crowd, but it is still a tribe. The Green Beret learns to solve ugly problems with other experts close enough to argue, plan, improvise, and carry the mission across the line. The team is not weakness. The team is the weapon. Delta Day 1 removes that weapon. On the 18 Mi march, the Green Beret cannot lean on the team sergeant's judgment. He cannot pass the radio to the Como sergeant. He cannot let the medic quietly check the torn skin on his heel and tell him how bad it is. He cannot let the senior weapon sergeant slow the pace because the mission needs every man at the objective. Delta makes the soldier become his own team room inside his own skull. That sounds simple until the road starts pulling skin from feet and the ruck starts biting into the nerves near the shoulders. Honey's account includes a brutal little detail that explains the day one problem better than any motivational poster. A former ranger who had gone into special forces was injured on the march and his foot damage was ugly enough to stop him. The reason was not cowardice. The reason was specific. His feet were no longer conditioned for that kind of ruck abuse after time in Special Forces phase training. Old calluses. Delta does not need to discover whether the man once had hard feet. Delta discovers whether his feet are hard today. The detail that everyone misses at the time is that Day 1 is not designed to find the best resume in the formation. Day 1 finds the man whose current habits match the current test. That is why the Green Beret name can become a liability. The soldier arrives with proof that he can learn languages, advise foreign forces, survive Robin Sage, operate in hostile areas, and work through indigenous partners. The road does not care. The road only asks whether the man can manage pace, pain, heat, thirst, distance, and doubt without drama. That is the first reason Special Forces training fails to protect so many Green Berets at Delta selection. Special Forces builds a team-centered operator. Delta selection begins by isolating the operator from the team. The ODA environment creates a certain kind of excellence. A Green Beret is expected to teach, persuade, advise, and influence. Official Special Forces materials describe soldiers who work with and through host nations, regional partners, resistance forces, and indigenous populations. That means the Green Beret has to be more than a shooter. He has to be a military instructor in a foreign village, a diplomat in body armor, a problem solver in a tribal meeting, and a combat leader when the partner force starts falling apart. That is an extraordinary skill set. And a conventional infantry unit cannot simply copy it by putting a language book in a rucksack. But Delta is not selecting for that same center of gravity on day 1. Delta's first filter is not a village meeting in Pineland. It is not an ODA. Planning session around a plywood table. It is not a partner force that needs instruction on a machine gun. It is a lone man under a rock moving through North Carolina darkness while the cadre measured the one thing the team cannot fake for him. The second reason hits after the body starts failing. Navigation culture. A Green Beret absolutely knows land navigation, Special Forces assessment and selection, the QC course, Robin Sage, small unit tactics, fieldcraft, and unconventional warfare all demand map sense. Nobody who knows the Special Forces pipeline should pretend Green Berets are helpless without a blue dot on a screen. That argument is lazy, and Green Berets in the War Code comment section will rip it apart for good reason. The real issue is not whether a Green Beret knows a map. The issue is what kind of navigation pressure delta selection creates. Special Forces land navigation often lives inside a broader mission. A detachment may move with a purpose, link up with a guerrilla force, avoid roads, coordinate fires, manage radios, report, intelligence, and protect partner troops. The navigation matters, but the mission gives it context. A Green Beret can use terrain, teammates, time windows, radio plans, local knowledge, and mission logic, even when the movement is hard. The movement belongs to a larger problem. Delta selection strips the larger problem down to a cold individual equation. A candidate gets a map, a compass, a route, a point, and a standard. The terrain becomes the enemy because there is nothing else to negotiate with. No partner force, no language advantage, no team rehearsal, no detachment plan, no village elder, no junior soldier who can take a turn carrying the odd piece of kit. Just a candidate, a bearing, a distance, a rock, and a deadline. That is why the unaided navigation reputation around delta selection became legendary. Public descriptions of delta selection emphasize traditional map and compass work, increasing distances, increasing loads, and psychological testing after the physical phase. The phrase sounds old-fashioned until you imagine the candidate alone at night with tired legs, a wet map case, a compass needle, pine trunks that all look the same, and enough fatigue to make a smart man doubt a simple azimuth. GPS culture makes this even sharper in the modern imagination. But the older Delta lesson existed long before every soldier carried digital tools. A GPS can tell a soldier where he is. Delta selection wants to know who the soldier is when the easy confirmation disappears. That sentence matters because special forces can reward adaptive social intelligence. A Green Beret who can read people, build rapport, shift tone, and use the environment around him is valuable. Delta selection rewards a colder individual discipline. During the land navigation phase, the candidate has to trust his own work when his body is lying to him. A bad pace count in the sandhills becomes a private courtroom. A wrong turn becomes a private accusation. A hill that looks like the hill on the map becomes a private argument between hope and evidence. Green Berets can fail there because their strengths can pull them toward the wrong solution. A special forces soldier is trained to solve complex human problems. Delta's day one problem is intentionally primitive. Move from here to there under load in time without using another man as a crutch. A soldier who overthinks the situation can bleed minutes. A soldier who underthinks the situation can bleed miles. The cadre do not need to see panic. The map will show it for them. For the wider Delta selection breakdown, War Code already covered why 90% of Delta Force candidates quit in the first 48 hours. Link in the description. That video explains the broader quit rate. But this Green Beret problem is narrower. The soldier with the tab is not failing because he lacks elite training. He is failing because one kind of elite training can build reflexes that collide with a different kind of elite test. By midday, the body is no longer the only battlefield. The psychology starts to surface. Honey describes psychological testing as a repeated feature of selection taken when tired and structured to expose deception. instability, and emotional leakage. That matters because the 18 Mi Road March is only the visible wound. The hidden test begins when the candidate tries to explain himself to himself. A green beret who has spent years being evaluated as mature, adaptable, and trusted suddenly has to accept that Delta does not inherit that evaluation. Delta starts from zero. That is a personal insult disguised as assessment. A soldier walks in with years of proof. A special forces tab, combat deployments, schools, scars, stories, maybe a silver star in the formation, maybe a language badge, maybe a reputation in a team room. Delta looks at him and asks for push-ups, a road march, a map, and a personality test. That can feel ridiculous to a man who already survived harder combat than any cadre lecture can describe. But that feeling is part of the trap. The selection course is testing how the soldier reacts when prestige stops working. The third reason special forces training fails to prepare some green berets is the psychological profile mismatch. The green beret trait set is built for patience with people. Delta selection hunts for a different kind of aloneliness. That does not mean Delta operators have no teamwork, and it definitely does not mean green berets lack aggression. The difference is where each pipeline places its first loyalty under stress. The green beret is selected and trained to influence a human network. He may have to teach foreign soldiers who do not speak English, calm a partner commander who wants to quit, read a village elder who is lying through politeness, keep a guerrilla force from wasting ammunition, and build legitimacy for an American objective in a place where nobody asked for Americans. That work requires ego control, cultural patience, social reading, and a willingness to win through someone else. The green beret often succeeds when a partner force looks good. Delta selection, especially early selection, places the candidate in a smaller emotional box. The candidate succeeds when nobody has to manage him. Nobody has to motivate him. Nobody has to explain the standard twice. Nobody has to watch his face after bad news. Nobody has to wonder whether his confidence is real or theatrical. The ideal candidate is not simply tough. The ideal candidate is administratively clean, emotionally contained, physically durable, and quietly dangerous. That is why the commander board in Honey's account matters. After the marches and tests, Delta still brought candidates in front of senior men like Charlie Beckwith, and the board stress tested personality as much as performance. The room could challenge a candidate, bait him, question him, pressure him, and watch whether the man lost control. The ruck march proved the body would keep moving. The board asked whether the personality could be trusted with national-level missions when the room got ugly. A green beret can be excellent at influence and still struggle when influence no longer works. He cannot teach the board. He cannot rapport build the road. He cannot negotiate with the clock. He cannot brief his way past torn feet. He cannot use ODA credibility as a substitute for the current standard. Delta selection quietly removes every audience that a socially skilled operator might use. The soldier is left with performance. That is why the green beret versus Delta argument gets so heated. Both sides hear an insult that the other side may not be making. A Delta supporter hears the title and says, "Of course, green berets fail. Delta is the top of the spear." A green beret supporter hears the title and says, "That is internet nonsense. Special Forces does missions Delta never touches." Both sides are right about something, and both sides miss the key point. Delta selection is not a universal military IQ test. It is a filter for a specific job. Special Forces training is not a lesser version of Delta training. It is a different answer to a different national problem. The Green Beret pipeline takes a soldier and turns him into someone who can live inside ambiguity for months. SFA's tests. Suitability. The Q course builds occupational skills. Language training builds access to people and regions. Robin Sage forces candidates into a fictional country where resistance fighters, civilians, local authorities, and guerrilla problems create a messy human battlefield. The final Special Forces product is supposed to shape a foreign military or political environment with a small American footprint. That is not a consolation prize. That is one of the hardest missions in the US military. Delta selection takes a soldier and asks whether he can be trusted for a narrower, colder purpose: counter-terrorism, hostage rescue, direct action, special reconnaissance, sensitive missions, and national-level problems demand a different entry filter. The candidate has to prove that pain does not make him sloppy, solitude does not make him needy, navigation does not make him emotional, and status does not make him entitled. The unit can train tactics later. The selection course is trying to find the raw material. That is why day one matters so much. A long selection pipeline can hide behind mystique, classified missions, black kit, night vision, helicopters, and doors blowing inward. Day one has none of that glamour. Day one is boots, sand, water, ruck straps, road dust, a clipboard, and a man deciding whether the pace he chose 20 minutes ago was stupid. That is a humiliatingly simple way to expose a complicated resume. Picture a green beret after the first hard movement. The Fort Bragg sun is up. His uniform is soaked. His ruck has rubbed the same patch of skin for hours. The men who ran ahead are somewhere on the road, either heroes or future casualties. The cadre are not impressed by his tab because half the formation has tabs. A voice in his head starts building a legal defense. He has already done combat. He has already trained foreign troops. He has already passed harder schools. He has a team waiting back at group. He has nothing to prove to these men. That voice is often the beginning of the end. Selection does not need a candidate to say those words out loud. The body will say them through pace. The eyes will say them in formation. The hand will say them when it hesitates near the voluntary withdrawal option. The feet will say them when the soldier stops taking care of small problems early because pride tells him pain is beneath attention. The map will say them when the candidate starts making emotional decisions instead of accurate decisions. The green beret who survives Delta Day 1 is usually the one who does not treat the green beret identity as armor. He treats the tab as history. The road is today. That is the part that makes the debate uncomfortable. The title says 8 of 10 green berets failed day 1, and the comment section immediately wants a scoreboard. Delta better than Special Forces. Special Forces overrated. Rangers tougher than both. Marines would have done it barefoot. The usual internet bar fight arrives wearing camouflage. The real scoreboard is more interesting. A green beret can be perfectly built for an order and poorly tuned for Delta selection. A Delta operator can be perfect for a hostage rescue mission and not the right man to spend months building a guerrilla battalion through a language barrier. A ranger can be a monster on a raid and still not have the patience for foreign internal defense. A conventional infantry NCO can have more raw grit than all three and still lack the specialized training for any of their missions. Elite military units are not ladder rungs. They are tools with different edges. That does not let the green beret pipeline off the hook. If Special Forces candidates repeatedly struggle with solo endurance under load, then the pipeline has a blind spot worth arguing about. If a soldier can come out of a high-status special operations world and lose the habit of punishing ruck mileage, that matters. If team excellence creates private dependence, that matters. If a tab becomes an emotional shield against fresh assessment, that matters. No unit should be too proud to ask whether its heroes are still conditioned for the ugly basics, but Delta elitism deserves scrutiny. 2. A selection model built around private suffering can mistake silence for maturity and pain tolerance for judgment. A man who can grind through a road march is not automatically the best man for every national mission. A candidate who fails day 1 is not automatically a weaker warrior. He may simply be optimized for a different battlefield. The danger with Delta mythology is that the public turns one selection course into a religion. The danger with Green Beret pride is that the public turns one tab into a lifetime exemption. Neither myth survives contact with the road. The Day 1 event breaks Green Berets first because it attacks the space between identity and current performance. The soldier arrives as part of a legendary regiment. The event treats him as a lone body under a rug. The soldier arrives trained to work through teams and partners. The event gives him nobody. The soldier arrives with navigation experience inside larger missions. The event reduces navigation to private accuracy under fatigue. The soldier arrives with social intelligence, teaching ability, and cultural patience. The event asks for quiet, repetitive, individual execution. By 1800, the formation is not the same formation that stood there before Sunrise. The Green Beret, who looked relaxed at 0430, may be gone. The Ranger, who looked average, may still be moving. The quiet infantryman nobody watched may have managed his pace better than the combat celebrity. The cadre do not need a speech. The road has already written the report. That is why the first day has such power in Delta stories. It is not the longest event in the mythology. It is not the famous final long walk. It is not the commander's board where Beckwith could cut into a man's ego with a few sentences. Day 1 matters because it delivers the first verdict before the candidate has time to hide behind the legend he brought with him. So when someone asks whether Green Berets are overrated because so many fail Delta selection, the honest answer is sharper than yes or no. Green Berets are not overrated. The wrong Green Beret confidence is overrated. The tab is real. The pipeline is real. The missions are real. The problem begins when a soldier confuses being selected yesterday with being selectable today. And when someone asks whether Delta selection is just elitist theater, the honest answer cuts the other way. Delta selection has theater in it because all elite military selection has theater. The plain clothes cadre, the secretive compound, the brutal road, the psychological board, the voluntary withdrawal ritual, and the silence all shape a candidate's mind. But theater can still reveal truth. A stage can still show who is acting. At Camp Mackle and Fort Bragg, the truth was never hidden behind a flaming sword insignia. The truth was under a rucksack on a road through the North Carolina pines. A Green Beret who can teach a foreign battalion to fight may still fail when Delta asks him to manage himself alone. A Delta candidate who can walk alone may still lack the patience to build a partner force in a country nobody can find on a map. That tension is the whole argument. Tell us in the comments which side of the fight you take. Are Green Berets exposed when 8 out of 10 fail Delta's first day filter? Or is Delta selection testing a narrow trait that says less about special forces than the internet wants to admit? And for the full breakdown of the wider quit rate, watch War Codes, why 90% of Delta Force candidates quit in the first 48 hours.